And hello again, and welcome to the next video about my Guzzi here. And it turns out this is episode 30, would you believe? And when I made the very first video about the Guzzi all those years ago, I must say I'm very surprised. I've made so many, but here we are. And although the bike doesn't look anywhere near finished, it actually is getting quite damn close to being finished. The seat's done, the tank's all ready to go. Most of the engineering's finished now, just got a few small details to sort out. As I say, the devil is in the detail. And I'll be going through a few of those small details in this video. And then we're going to stop because I'm going to spend God knows how many hours completing the wiring. But first, let's go through only a few of the many small details I've got to sort out on the bike before I start the old wiring. And the first of those details is this bracket here that we made in the last video, which supports the back of the seat. And if you recall, this caused me a lot of problems because I had to make it twice because I was stupid and I got my measurements wrong. And even though it's made out of 3mm thick aluminium, I did think maybe it might be a bit too weak. So what we've done is we welded in some supports here and here, and now it ain't going to bend, it's going nowhere. And that will fit, let me see, something like that. And then the seat unit fits on top of that. And that brings me to the second detail change to do with these seat mounts. And that second change is in this envelope here, in which we have a few sheets of this stuff, which is 1mm thick neoprene. And I'm going to use that to sandwich between the hard aluminium brackets and the softer fiberglass lining of the seat unit, something like that. Just going to cut it down, drill it, and hopefully that should cushion and support the fiberglass lining. I don't want it fretting, I don't want it cracking, and hopefully this stuff will help. And next up, we had to move the silencers out by 5mm to clear the new Hagen nitro shocks. To do that, we needed a longer spacer, and it's on there now. So there's the original one, and there's the longer 5mm version. I've also had to order some longer hex bolts as well, which I didn't have, so they hopefully will be here soon. And so here at the front of the bike, we had to find a way to mount this new front mudguard, like this, while also keeping the fork brace. This fork brace isn't standard, we made it some time ago. So somehow I've got to retain this and also fit this, and the problem is these pre-drilled holes are wider than the width of the fork brace. So my original idea was to make a new fork brace a bit wider, and then we can bolt it up to the underside. But I made a template in cardboard, tried it on the bike, and it didn't look right. It was too bulky, too wide, looked really odd. So that idea had to go, and so then we came up with a different idea. And that idea was to take some 3mm plate and roll it to the profile of the mudguard like that. So now my next task is going to be to somehow work out a way of connecting this curved plate to the underside of this flat brace. I'm not sure the best way of doing it, but I may start by drilling and tapping 4 blind holes in the base. So that'll give me a start at least. And now I'm going to take both of these things to Jeff in his workshop, because I suspect it's going to need a miller to make some kind of spacer blocks here to connect the two together. But we'll see. Perhaps he'll come up with a better idea, who knows. So yeah, that's progress on the front mudguard to date. And now let's move on. And finally, last but not least, I've got a problem right down here where this nylock nut, which is used to help hold the rear set in place, is now just kissing the side of the swing arm. And that's happened because I've now fitted the longer Hagen nitro shocks. So to get round that problem, I'm going to fit one of these things. This is called a half nut. And as its name suggests, it's just half the width of a standard nut. Now, since it's not a nylock, I will have to back it up with a locking washer. But nevertheless, I think it should be thin enough and it should give me the clearance I need. And now here we are the next day, and Barney and me have just come back from a long walk to see Jeff the welder. And while we were there, he kindly welded on these 2 aluminium strips to the top of the mudguard mount. Now that done, what we can do is take this to the workshop, Jeff's workshop, and he will mill the tops completely flat so that it will bolt up beneath that fork brace. course, to do that we also have to drill it, but that's no great problem. Now it does look a little bit rough right now with the weld visible, but when it's on the miller, what we can do is mill the front and the back to make it look nice and neat, or at least that's the idea. So yeah, pretty happy with that. Barney's now very, very tired after a long walk and a hot day, so I think we'll leave him to his sleep. And now here we are, a few days later, and the machining on this bracket's now complete. As you can see, the top's been machined flat, and also we've drilled and threaded the underside to take these countersunk bolts, so it's all done now. It still needs a little bit more sort of polishing and prettying up, because it's a little bit rough, but yeah, pretty much it's done. So now we can just put that on there, like that, and bolt it all up, and we'll see how it looks on the bike. And now, there it's on the bike, and I must say it's been quite a lot of work to get to that point, just to make a simple bracket for the mudguard, but anyway, it's done now. It does still need a bit more work, as you can see. It's got some engineer's ink on there still, needs a good polish, but yeah, overall I'm pretty happy with it. And now with that done, we can move on to the next problem. And so moving on then, I've had to borrow the dog's rug to put this on, and what we have here is the Mark 1 seat unit I had for the Guzzi some time ago. And it's from a 1970s Ducati SS900, and I fitted it, and in the end I wasn't too happy with it, so I didn't go with it. However, I do quite like this rear light here, an LED light, which we made the bracket and this billet cover for. So I would like to reuse that on the new seat unit before it goes off for paint. So what I'm going to do is remove it from here and go and try it out on the new seat unit. And now here we have the rear of the seat unit with this mounting bracket we bolted on last week, and let's just see how this fits. And of course it doesn't fit. The angle's all wrong, and also these holes are too far down, they don't match this bracket here. Okay, yeah, so that's that. But I also want to do some more changes to this light itself, rather the billet housing for the light. It's still pretty fat actually, I could lose a bit of weight from that, just machine it down a wee bit. And also what I might do is drill some holes radially along here around the outside. That way I lose a bit of weight, but it also means the light can then be seen from the sides and not just the back. Yeah, so I think I might do that, which means taking this to the workshop and do some more work on it. And next, some good news, which is that I've got a local painter lined up to paint the bike for me in about 3 weeks' time. But the bad news is I'm still unsure, undecided as to what colour to paint the bike, or indeed what graphics to use on the bike. And that's where these blue lines come into play. This is pinstriping tape. It's great stuff, you can reuse it over and over again, and also you can stretch it to go around corners and so on. So what I've been doing is just trying out ideas. So in this particular idea, we can see that I've got a panel here on the side, and I'm thinking that the whole bike will be red, just like this, or maybe even brighter than this, and this panel here will be white with a fine pinstripe around it. Then we'll have Moto Guzzi decal in the middle, but that, rather than being gold and black, will be white and black. And I'm not sure if you can see, but as I turn around, here we've got a similar panel on the seat unit on both sides. So that's a pretty simple, oops, hang on, let me turn around again. So that's not too difficult, is it? It's pretty simple. Another option, which is even simpler, is to have speed stripes on the top of the bike. I can have a white stripe on the front, a white stripe along the top of the tank, and a white stripe along the seat unit here. It'll be quite broad with 2 finer pinstripes either side. Dead simple, it's been done time and time again. And that's one reason why I may not actually go that way, because it's been done so often. There's no surprise, it's just boring, so that's why I'm looking to have, and that's why I'm looking to have something a bit different, which is where this panel comes in. But I'm not sure if this will work. It's actually quite tricky because the tank's quite curvy, it's got a curve here, and it then disappears underneath here, it's got a curve here. So, you know, it's quite difficult to find a pattern or a paint scheme that works with this particular shape. Now, I know lots and lots of people saying to me now, look, this is aluminium, it's polished underneath, so you can have this shape here, polished aluminium, and then paint the rest. And it's been done again, time and time again. But I don't want to do that, I want the whole bike painted. So there's two options, but as I've been looking at this, I've come up with a slightly different idea, which is to have this shape sort of shortened a bit, and instead of the white being here, the white could end right there. So if you imagine the white like that, in fact you don't have to imagine it, what we'll do is we'll get this pinstriping tape here, as I film on. Let's see if we can find the end of the damn thing. And this is actually great stuff, it really is. You can use it and it doesn't leave a residue behind, doesn't leave any stickiness behind. So it's great on paintwork. So let me just stand up because it's tricky to do when I was leaning down. So if you imagine, let's see, and then turn it back on itself. Again, I'm not a professional painter, so when the painter does it for real, he'll do this really, really well. And actually that's how he'll do the pinstriping, by using his tape and then spraying around it. Yeah, so forget about that bit there, that'll stay white, and then this is then thinner and a little bit, I don't know, yeah. Again, you see that's not quite right, I've got a little clump there, so let me just peel it off. And this is the great thing about this stuff, you can do it over and over again until you're happy with it. So, let's see, pretty tricky to do it on film, but we'll do our best. Just run your finger along it, we want it to go. Something like that, and then we'll imagine that's a nice corner there, a nice rounded off corner. Something like that. And what I like about that is, it makes it thinner and longer, which makes it look a bit sleeker, I think, rather than having this panel here all white. Yeah, so that might work. So there's 2 or 3 options, and no doubt I'll come up with half a dozen more before the day's out. The other big question, of course, is, do I paint it red and white, or do I go for a different colour? I really like the black and gold I've got on my Norley, so another option is black and gold, or black and silver. If I went for silver, I could paint the whole thing black, and then I could actually just paint this bit here silver. That's also a sort of option. But one thing to remember is, whatever I do on the tank, I've got to somehow mimic on the seat unit here. Now right now I've got these sort of pretend panels here, which will be white, where you might have a number board or something like that. But whatever we do, it's going to have to work, both the tank, the cockpit fairing and the seat unit. So I'm going to carry on thinking through these ideas, and hopefully I'll probably have 2 or 3, I've sort of got down to 2 or 3 options, which I'll take to the painter, and then we'll discuss it, and hopefully we'll come up with a good idea. He might have better ideas than me, and then we'll go with that. As I say, that's not going to happen for another 2 or 3 weeks, so I've got plenty of time to play around with this stuff before I'm happy with the final result. Yeah, so that's what's happening today. But in the meantime, I've now got to go off and do some machining on the rear lamp case, the rear sort of billet holder we've got for that, before it can go on the rear seat unit. And what else? Of course, wiring. Must forget the wiring. I think that's great then. There's not really much else in terms of engineering and sort of making things fit. Yeah, so I can't put it off anymore. I'll have to get on and do the wiring. But first, let's go to the workshop and sort out the rear lamp, and then we'll come back and I'll carry on playing around with ideas with this tape. And now here we are, back from the workshop, where we've done a bit more work on these brackets and also this billet cover for the rear lamp. Now, I didn't take my camera because I had no time to film, only had a few minutes, but while I was there, we made a new flat bracket to replace this one, which meant I could still use this curved bracket here, which I already had. And while we're there, we also put this billet cover on the lathe and took about 2mm off the outside surface. And that saved an awful lot of weight, a surprising amount of weight actually. I'm not sure you could tell, but it is actually quite a lot thinner than it used to be. I'm pretty happy about that, because not only have I got this rear lamp hanging off these 2 small bolts at the back here, I'm also going to have, of course, the rear number plate as well. So if I can save some weight, then we'll do that. What I didn't do is drill any holes radially in the outside. Just didn't have time. But maybe I'll do that another day. But right now I'm pretty happy with that. Everything's sort of lined up. It's now pointing back as it should do. So yeah, pretty happy with that. And so with the work for the mounting of the rear lamp sorted out, we can put that to one side, for the time being at least. And we can return to thinking about the design of the paintwork on the bike. Now, since this morning I have made a few more changes. Quite subtle, but I think I am slowly getting there. And what I've done is, rather than having this white panel ending about here on this curve, I've carried the tape right down beneath the tank so that it'll be white all the way around here and also white down here. And the reason I did that was because having this line here just didn't seem to work for me, and also having a line here to make it narrower and longer and maybe sleeker also didn't quite work. So at the moment I'm pretty happy with that particular design. And another important point I've come to realise by working on the bike is that I want this point here to be straight. I don't want it bending down following the line of this curve. It doesn't quite look right, it looks quite weak. I want it to be straight. Gives more of a sort of a speedy look, I guess. And now, moving on to the seat unit, I've just pulled off the striping I had for that side panel, didn't like it. And instead, I've just added a centre line here to give me something to work from. And then I've put these two lines here, which are pretty much matching where I want the red to be. So if you imagine all this is red, the sides are white, that means this is going to be red and these sides will be white. The next question is, how do we then shape these white side panels? And so now, looking at the seat unit from the side, and as usual I've got no room at all, I've got a wall here and a wall here. So very difficult to work, but never mind. So I've just got this line here that I'm just going to follow this curve. And the question is, do I just end it here so that that's all white and that's red? Or do I follow the curve around somehow to a point, and then go back? Don't like that idea because having a point here just looks a bit weird. Also, of course, that's white and red. This is red. This bit's white. What should this be? Should it be red? Should it be white? Should it be something else? Who knows? So as I'm just going through these thoughts in my head, I just thought, well, hang on. Why don't we just be brave and just say, end it like that? Because that's a point which matches that point there. And then at this end, I'm not sure you can see, but that just ends again at a point. So it means I don't have to bend the tape around and put a line here. Because if I did that, then the red would be a very fine line here. A bit kind of weird really, because that's a fat line, that's a thin line, it just looks weird. Whereas if I'd, let me just get some tape. And again, these are just ideas, I'll probably change my mind about 10 times or even more before we get to the point of painting the damn thing. But if I said, right, that's red, this is white, therefore, let me see, so keep things aligned, that means this bit will have to be red too, perhaps. That's got to be red, and that looks stupid because that's too fat and that's too thin. You know, so all these things you can sort of work out in real life. I've been trying to do this actually on my PC, just looking at photographs and trying to work out what's going on, but it's impossible because that's 2D, this is 3D in real life, and it makes life so much easier just to go and get your fingers on the damn thing, get your hands on it and play around. Or perhaps I could, let me see, let me just do this now. Do that, make a point like that, and then carry that back, and that point matches that point. But again, it's a little bit, I don't know, I don't like that, it's a bit bitty, it's a bit, what's the word, fiddly, yeah, fiddly, so don't like that. So I think my current best idea, I'll get rid of that, reuse that later on, is to just take this damn line here. Sure enough, I can follow that line down, follow it round, and perhaps just end it there. Now, fingers crossed, I'm saying this, I'll probably change my mind 10 times before we come to paint. And then of course I've got to go into the painter, and he may have his own input and say, look, that's great, but how about this, how about that? And hopefully we'll come up with a good plan and a good idea for the paint job. Because like it or not, the paint job can make or break a bike. And having spent such a lot of time on the damn thing, I want to get it right. But anyway, that's it for now. Time my little break, a cup of tea, so I'll come back and carry on with the real work later on today.